Video 26. meditationguide.org. The ego fights higher vibrations. When the ego is exposed to this information, it doesn't necessarily vibrate at a higher frequency because it relies on fear and judgment. The ego does experience happiness when it gets what it wants, but then it will dip down into unhappy emotions whenever it doesn't receive what it desires. Hence, the ego doesn't believe true happiness is possible. It seems ridiculous that you can be infinitely happy all the time for no reason. Of course, when your energy is vibrating at a higher rate, you'll have a different point of view. It would now seem silly to drop down into the lower energy. Because if you do, you would suffer. However, you must not neglect the ego and heal your emotional wounds. If you don't, it'll keep showing up and pulling you down into feeling bad. Even though you want to heal your ego, the ego fights you because it functions through fight or flight. The higher vibrations feel strange to the ego since it oscillates at a lower spectrum. The ego feels comfortable in the lower vibrations, because that is what it's familiar with. It relies on fear, judgment, the need to control, the need to be right, and the need to blame, hence, nothing seems satisfying for long. Even if you're successful in life and have everything, there's always a feeling of discontent about something, because your ego continues to judge itself and others. Here is how your ego fights you. 1. Be in a state of denial. The ego denies that there is such thing as true happiness or higher vibration since it doesn't experience it all the time. It only knows temporary or conditional joy such as, when I get what I want, I feel good, when I don't, I feel bad. Therefore, unconditional happiness does not exist. This is a clever strategy from the ego so it can continue to hang on to its lower vibrations and rely on conditional happiness, by looking outside of itself in order to feel good. However, this approach doesn't quite work, because whenever the ego doesn't get what it desires from the outside world, it reacts resentfully and feels disappointed. 2. The need to control and the need to be right. The ego hates the idea of letting go because it likes being in control. Letting go feels as if it's going to lose its power, hence, it will try to dominate. It has the need to be right while it thinks others are wrong. However, this creates a narrow perception for the ego. It sees reality through fear and judgment, and closes itself off from seeing the big picture. It's not viewing reality through inner peace, clarity, insight, and wisdom. 3. The need to judge. Since the ego relies on judgment, it thinks non-judgment cannot be used. Therefore, it will hang on to being judgmental about everything. 4. Right and wrong. The ego insists on being right. Whatever the ego likes, it will label that as right. And whatever the ego doesn't like, it will identify that as wrong. It judges reality based on its likes and dislikes. 5. The need to blame. Whenever things go wrong, the ego will try to blame something, someone, or itself. Thus, it doesn't like the idea of non-judgment, or no blame. By having something to blame, it feels in control and right. It likes finding fault with things. 6. Attach to the past and worry about the future. The ego builds its sense of self based on failures and successes that occurred in the past. It also has a hard time with traumatic memories, and stores a lot of negative reactions inside its own energy. It worries about the future as well, and doesn't like uncertainty. 7. Addiction to conditional happiness. The ego seeks pleasure and avoids pain. It does this from a state of lack, it feels incomplete, hence, it relies on something or someone to make itself feel good. This works temporarily, but as soon as it loses or not in control of those things, the ego generates negative responses and creates emotional wounds such as, you don't love me, you hurt me, you abandon me, life is not good enough, etc. Thus, the ego becomes unhappy once more. The ego may rely on drugs, alcohol, consumerism, sex, and other addictions to escape from its emotional pain. But sooner or later the ego will experience dissatisfaction with life, because all pleasures are short-lived. Even when the ego finds success in the real world, it gets used to the material wealth, thus, it becomes bored at some point. If you ever hang around rich people, you will notice they also have stress and anxiety. Unhappiness is still there. since the mind lacks inner peace and does not experience unconditional joy from within. Conditional happiness, therefore, has its limitations, whereas true happiness does not. It has infinite bliss and clarity. Of course, the ego doesn't believe it, because it only knows lower vibrations and momentary satisfaction. 8. Addiction to drama and conflict. The ego finds drama and conflict interesting. It likes to win and hates to lose. For example, to watch a film with only good characters, who do nice things, this would be very boring for the egoic mind. However, when there are drama, conflict and competition involved, the ego gets engrossed in it. Why does it behave this way? The ego is addicted to fluctuating feelings. Therefore, meditation doesn't seem intriguing to the ego, and it wants to go back to being emotionally up and down, back to lower vibrations. Hence, you must show yourself a different way of being. End of video 26. meditationguide.org